everybody, this is Detroit AllyCat. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here. I have a pretty interesting story I'd like to tell you. I was very intrigued and drawn into it because I've never done anything like this, and it should be pretty amusing for you guys to watch me try to pronounce Japanese names. But we are actually going to talk about some Japanese ghost stories, sorta. It's a really sad story, but it has a little bit of mystery, and it's really cool. So without further ado, let's get spooky. Okay, before we jump into the story, I last week just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is actually amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching me, because I never thought that I would be able to be interesting enough to be watched. But here I am, and you're watching me, and I just wanted to say thank you. And I did a little giveaway because I wanted to say thank you back. My friend owns a company called Violet's Botanicals. It's a really cool gift box, and I did a random, I picked a number, and I had my daughter go down the list and pick somebody so she wouldn't know who it was. So the winner of this giveaway for my 1,000 subscribers is Angie Lupus Life. I hope I said that right. Thank you so much, and congratulations, Angie. I will be sending you a message in the comments as to where to send your address so we can send you out that gift box. So enjoy your gift box, because it's really cool and the products are really nice, and I just love when I get stuff from a company that is made by people like me and you. Just a regular pestle and mortar shop that is making great things happen. I don't know if that even sounded cool, but nonetheless. So let's talk about this event that happened that led to some of the most intriguing ghost stories I have ever read about. And just before we even get into it, I just want to say that it's kind of weird how the number 11 pops into most of my tragedies and ghost stories. It really is just a number that always happens to be in some of these stories, and I've never noticed it until today, which is weird because you'd think that I would have noticed it. But I was reading about, what happened, and I'll just tell you. So in March 11th, 2011, one of the biggest earthquakes of all time. I think it was the fourth biggest earthquake that has ever hit in the entire world. Don't ask me what the Richter scale is. It's a 9 something. I don't know how to tell you scientifically what it is. It was big. It was devastating. It was it was violent and crazy, and it hit the coast of Japan. And it was March 11th on 2011, which just really is bizarre to me. But so this earthquake hits, and immediately, Japan knows exactly what to do when an earthquake hits, because if you look at Japan, it's right there by the sea. And so what's going to happen when earthquake hits? A tsunami. And a tsunami is no joke for Japanese people. This is something they experience, they are used to, and they don't really, it's a very scary thing for them, and rightly so because of what happens. So I was reading all these quotes and stuff, and this woman, she basically is being interviewed, and she says, we love the sea. It's part of us. It's always gave stuff to us. And it's just part of our culture. We've always loved the sea until the day of the tsunami. And so what ensued after the earthquake hit was all these these warning signs, like these warning sounds came on, like meow, meow, like, and immediately everybody knows, like, okay, an earthquake has hit. It is time to get to higher ground. Like, grab your dog, grab your kid, go fast. And so everybody's like in this like crazy like state of like, let's get out of here. And basically the tsunami was coming, and it's kind of sad because you hear like the scientists talking about it, and they're like, we knew it was coming. We had planned for it. We built walls. We had alarms. We did all these things to protect our people, but we planned for everything. But what we did not plan for was how big this tsunami was going to be. And the thing about it is that like the earthquake was so strong and so like powerful that the tsunami was going to be powerful. So basically, when the tsunami came in certain parts of the coast of Japan, there was like the highest point, I believe, was 22 feet tall. Now that's like devastating. Like 22 feet tall, like of pure water, like a huge like water wall coming towards you. And like on some of these coasts of Japan and these little cities and towns and like areas, they have like houses like right there. So when this like water wall like comes, it's just gonna like wipe everything out. And that's what it did. It wiped a lot of places out. I mean, like picked up houses and just took them. And it was so sad because a lot of people thought, tsunami, let's get to the higher ground. And instead of like getting in their car and driving as fast as they could to the higher ground, they got on top of their house. They thought, we've been through tsunamis before, we'll be able to get through this again. But you could not survive getting on top of your house. I mean, 22 feet tall, that's taller than your house. And the length of the water that came, it just was like miles and miles into the coast. And so like it was incredible. Like some of the footage that I saw was just like absolutely incredible. And I mean, the devastation that happened, and like water is a very destructive force. It's a beautiful element, and I love water. It's like something that it's calming and it's beautiful. But angry water, like, water can destroy just as much as fire, which is crazy because you can put fire out with water. And it just is, like water really can do some devastating things, and it did. It devastated the communities in Japan, and there were like all these different towns, and they like mentioned like how many different heights the tsunami actually hit. But like, not only when an earthquake hits, is that like the moment of like you think that that's it, then you get the tsunami, but then after that you get a aftershock. And basically like an aftershock is just like, the earth is like kind of like trying to settle down from it. So that's like miniature earthquakes after the big earthquakes, which will cause tiny little tsunamis to come back. And so it's not something that like just stops. It's like a devastating thing that continues to go and go. And as of March 6, 2018, this is the calculations they've done. They counted 15,899 deaths in Japan. 2 happened in overseas because the earthquake was so big that it actually hit other continents. Now, 2 people dying in another continent is nothing compared to the 15,899 deaths, but there was also 6,157 people injured. And then on top of that, there's 2,529 people missing. That's like, we're getting around 25,000 people. And we're talking almost 20,000 people dead. Or at least, they're missing. If they're not coming back, they're probably deceased. That's quite a large number of people to die. So let's talk about like the Japanese culture a little bit. And I'm not going to pretend to know how to pronounce certain words, so we're not going to go into what they call them and all this stuff because I'm not an expert on that. And I'm going to give you some of the interviews that I actually saw that I thought was very, it was very relevant to what we're talking about. What I thought was the most interesting and most insightful was there was this monk, and he was interviewed, and he was like, see, to the Japanese culture, death is very different than to the rest of the world. When people die to the rest of the world, they die, and they're gone. But that's not how it is with us. And, he was in this little temple, and he took, they had a wall, and it's made out of rice paper, and there was somebody standing on the other side of the rice paper, and he said, death is like this. And then he shut the rice paper, and you could plainly see someone was standing there, but they weren't right there in front of his face. He's like, you know that they're there, you can see them, but they're not alive. There's nothing better than telling a ghost story and then hearing someone make a weird noise in a quiet, silent house. Really, there's nothing better. Just saying. Okay, and it's kind of cool when they talk to this monk because he's sitting in this room, and this room has all these little tiny they look like plaques, but they're not plaques. They're, I guess, some kind of a form of a tombstone or a memorial for some of the people that have died in this tsunami. And he said, I've been trained to deal with these kind of things, but I never thought in a million years that I would have to come face to face with this type of devastation. And he said he was actually outside, and he was standing there, and this man came up to him and was like, I'm cold, and I'm at the bottom of the sea, and I'm scared, and I don't know what happened. And the monk said he turned to him and he looked at him and he said, there was a tsunami and you're dead. And he disappeared. And I just thought that was so, I thought that was powerful, because if you think about it, what would happen if you were caught in a tsunami or some natural disaster that you did not have time to get away from? And a lot of the footage that I watched, these people were trying to drive away from the tsunami, and they're in this bumper to bumper traffic jam, and so they're trying to push to get out, and behind them you can see the water coming. And when you're in some kind of a natural disaster like that, you're not going to, it doesn't just affect older people. I mean, these people had their kids in their car, their grandparents in their car, their pets, and they're sitting there and they're watching, and just like that, they're gone. And that is just, violent and quick, and just, you don't know what's happened to you. There's no peace for you. And they talked about a lot of these phenomenons that happened in the towns, and one of the ones that I really truly enjoyed was the ghost taxi driving, the ghost passengers of the taxis. In these islands, like, taxis are like a big thing. Like, you know, you get everywhere. There's a lot of tourists that comes there, and so they have a lot of taxis. And, like, this is the livelihood for a lot of people. And after the tsunami hit and they started to rebuild, there would be these people that would, hail a taxi. And the taxi drivers said that immediately when the people got into the taxi, that they felt like something was very off. Like, something was not right. And they would ask them, like, where do you want to go? And they would give them the address, and they would drive them to the address. And sometimes it would be very, very far. And when the sun came up or they got to the address, they would turn around and they would go to tell them, like, hey, this is how much you owe me. And the passenger would be gone. And what they came to believe is that these were the souls of the deceased going home or making contact with the living. And what I thought was really special is that, you know, the taxi drivers, because they had lost so many people and they had been part of the tsunami devastation, and they felt like a certain amount of respect for these spirits because they knew that they were someone's family members. Because they had gotten into the taxis and they had drove a certain amount of way, that money was still owed at the end of the night. So they began to pay the tolls of these ghost passengers to honor the spirits of the dead. And that was just like so powerful to me. And then another story was this woman was like in her house, and it was in the middle of the night, and she heard a knock, and she opened up the door, and this lady was standing there dripping wet, and she goes, I'm so cold, can I have some dry clothes? And the woman went and got some dry clothes. The woman got some dry clothes, and she opened up the door, and she handed the lady, you know, the dry clothes, and she was basically like, you know, she just went away. And the lady said that she had seen more people that were dripping wet standing outside of her door, and she believed that they were the missing or the dead from the tsunami, and that she was seeing them. And I mean, like, it's a sad story, it is, but these are not like one person accounts. Like, there's like story after story after story of these accounts online and people talking about it. And this other story, this woman, they had a little boy, I don't know, he was like 2 years old or something like that, and basically he had been killed in the tsunami, and he had like this little train, and you sat on it and you basically pushed along, and it went choo choo, you know, all the little kids have like those little things they push along. And her family was sitting down having dinner, and she had made the decision that she was going to kill herself that night. Like, this was going to be her last dinner, and she just decided, you know, I can't live anymore without my little boy. So she turned back to the little train that was still set up in her room, and she called for the little boy and said, come sit down. We're all going to have dinner together. Because, you know, people do things like that when they lose someone traumatically. And they were all eating, and all of a sudden the train just turned on. This is a battery operated train, and it turned on and it went choo choo. And like, she said she knew that was her way of her son telling her that he was okay, that everything was okay. And she decided that she wasn't going to kill herself anymore. And these towns, they slowly rebuilt, and they're like on the coast of some of these towns. You can see like the crosses of all these people, and it's just like, seriously, it gives you a weird, eerie feeling, but it also like makes you understand the perseverance of like humans. And I mean, honestly, I think Japanese are such a cool culture. They just have so much like to them. Like, I would love to go to Japan one day, but like some of the ghost stories were so interesting and sad, but yet beautiful in a way too, which is just, I feel like a lot of Japan's history is like that, to be honest. Like, also something that happened around that time is that there was a lot of possessions that were supposedly happening, and that was there was an uprising of possessions in the area after the tsunami, and they believed that it was like the unsettled spirits of the dead trying to come back any way that they could. I believe that those people did face severe suffering and PTSD, and it probably very much affected them mentally. And I'm not discounting that there was paranormal experiences there, because anytime somebody is taken violently and quickly and they haven't had time to say goodbye, or they're not in their right mind when they're gone, there's something left behind. And actually they have a word for it in Japanese. You know, it kind of is sort of described in The Grudge, but like, you know, in the movie The Grudge, but it's not so Hollywoodish. It's more like if there is something that happens and it's violent or something that was very traumatic or devastating, there's like a mark left upon the earth, and there's a mark in that spirit, and until that resolution is actually like taken care of, like whatever unleft business is dealt with, that will continue to be there, which is kind of creepy, because if you've ever seen The Grudge, that's a creepy movie. Like, really, that's a really creepy movie. Like, there are only a few horror movies that I kind of like get the chills afterwards, and that's one of them. Which that really, I don't want to say that's like Japanese culture, but like it does have some aspects of some of their beliefs, like most horror movies do. But yeah, I just thought this was such a really cool, interesting little story, and I really wanted to tell it because, number one, March 11th, 2011, like, wow, that's so crazy. I mean, like, think of some of the biggest and most devastating disasters that have happened to country, like 9/11, and then just the stories of the spirits. To me, when I hear stories of this, it makes me sad, because there were children that died, but it also makes me feel, I guess, a little bit more at peace with my beliefs, because I do believe that death is not the end, and that is just something that I struggle with a lot, because sometimes I see and hear things, which I've talked about in other videos, and it's very hard for me, because I want to sit there and like talk myself out of it, like, no, this did not happen, but I know it did. I saw it, I heard it, I felt it, and I can try to talk myself out of it all I want, but it happened. And sometimes, most of the time, I would prefer not to have those things happen to me, because you don't want to talk to people at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that aren't there. I mean, they got names for that, and it's not like a medium. It's like, you know, you belong in a little padded cell somewhere. So it's not an easy thing to deal with, but it makes me feel good that a culture would embrace that, they would see that for what it is, and they would be not fighting with it. In fact, when they talked to the people, they felt like they were honoring their dead by acknowledging that this is happening, this is real, and they accepted it. And I really feel like the world would be a better place if we did that. Like, if we accepted that, there's going to be some things that we can't explain. There's going to be. Obviously, there are some people out there that are going to tell you some stories and try to get some coins from you, and they're not good people. But there are truths. Like, there's always a different side to each. Like, a coin has two sides, and this story it was special to me, and I really wanted you to hear it because I thought it was special. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that if you are connected to this tragedy, that you don't feel like I'm exploiting it, because I do realize that this was a ginormous tragedy and many lives were lost, and I do not want to discount that in any way. I honestly just wanted to shed light into a small, tiny sliver of what happened to Japan that day. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing my ghost story with me, and please subscribe, stay with me, and I guess I'll see you next week. Stay spooky and stay safe. Bye, guys.